When I was a kid, I was probably 6 or 7 years old, my parents had gotten this catalog that had all these art reproductions of images. I cut all those little images out, I glued them down on manila paper, and then I ran the thing through my sewing machine. So that was my first book. I think what really started it off in a lot of ways is this book that I found in an antique store in this little town in Maine that my parents would go to every summer. But it was a little letterpress book, and it was produced by an organization called the Roycrofters, which was a little colony set up by Elbert Hubbard. I just thought it was a wonderful little book, so I decided to go to school to become an illustrator. Because I read so many books, and it's the whole idea of what you see in your head and reading the book and interpreting it visually. And I just love that. So in a lot of ways, this little book right here kind of planted a seed. I once had a dean ask me, but are books a viable art form? And I was like, yeah, because how is this not an art form? Everything put together and done by hand, that's an art form. There's a huge resurgence of fine art books, and these books go into collections. I have books in libraries, personal collections. People buy these kinds of books because they are an art form. The last thing I ever do is design the cover and the binding, because it has to reflect the content of the book. And I think it's terribly important, and it certainly does enhance and reflect the book. But I think probably the most favorite part is when you've got everything printed and you're folding the sheets over, you're putting them into signatures, and you start to see how the book is coming alive from what you were thinking about in your head and designing and mixing the ink colors. I think the whole book design process, the most important lesson to learn is patience. And when it screws up, you try it again. One thing that I've always enjoyed is that you're in complete control, because you got to pick the paper, you got to mix the ink colors, you got to decide on the typography you're going to use. And in the end, you got to decide on the binding. What a binding does is to make you want to pick up a book and look inside and see what's in it. So, I don't know, I love the feel of a book. It's a little object of art that you can pick up and have a private conversation with, and the binding is to intrigue you, but I've learned so much history also by studying the process and looking at old books and seeing what people have done before me. It's just been really fulfilling.